is your mind, body, and spirit right here, right now?
Oh, honestly, I'm filled with such excitement and with peace. Like you wouldn't imagine that like when something so big is about to happen that you'd feel like just settled and like here and so present. And it's probably, I mean, again, like one of the most amazing feelings ever. I don't think I've ever felt anything like this in my life. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, living the dream. Really, that's what it is. It's just like I'm in it and I'm really in it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I love to
awesome.
hear that. I love to hear that. And we go way back to, of course, our undergrad days back in the day. I was
Yes.
tripping out on that. We graduated back in class of 2000, right?
Wait,
Were you class of 2000 actually?
no, I was 2001. I was a
Oh,
year behind you.
2001.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
So I mean, it's been wow, it's been a long time, and you for some reason have not aged at all. So I think that you
It's
also
it's
you
it's
need
the
to share your
filters on Google
secrets.
Meets, I think. Thank you, Google Meets.
No, it's not. It's not,
Oh
and
my
you
gosh.
need to share your secrets because it's not fair.
Oh my gosh. No, no. Well, thank you for that. If you were in my classroom, you would get extra credit for that, I guess. But just wanted to yeah, I mean, so you're a writer and an editor, and like first of all, let's talk about that before we get into, of course, all about Keanu here.
Yes.
But before we do, yeah, just tell us about that. I mean, what has it been like? Because especially nowadays, right, we got Chat GPT, which wasn't the case when you started your career, right? But like, just how is the world of writing, especially like in today's time, how is it evolving and changing with like technology?
Oh gosh, I mean, I have to say that Chat GPT has basically ruined my industry. So a lot of people are using it as a tool, but it's been a weapon for a lot of against a
Mm,
lot of writers.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Whole entire industries. I mean, I'm also a pop culture journalist, right? And so a lot of the magazines that I used to write for, they cut their staffs by exponential numbers. I mean, because of what ChatGPT and AI writing has done. So in that sense, like the tech has been really a hindrance, I feel,
yeah,
for folks like me. And then the really difficult part is that so many newsrooms have closed down, and so as a freelance writer like myself, all of a sudden there's me, and then there's all these really famous writers who have lost their jobs. And so when you're trying to, pitch around stories or get a staff job or something, it's really difficult because you're now competing against folks who've been, have brand name recognition and they've worked for the Washington Post or the New York Times and, with all of that. And so it's definitely a really difficult moment for writers in particular. And I just feel very lucky that I kind of got my book deal before all of this stuff happened, because I wonder whether
yeah.
any of this would have even happened. And then like the world doesn't get this like ultimate book about Keanu Reeves movies. So like we would all have lost.
Yeah,
um,
right, for reals, huh?
yeah. So I'm also feeling like a lot of privilege and a lot of honor in this moment that I just managed to kind of get all of this together right in time.
Yeah,
Because it's really changing. It's changing a lot. And I'm at the moment trying to sell a couple other books, and we're just gonna like see how that goes in the new climate, because it's just oof, yeah, publishing has been hit hard by AI.
yeah,
And I don't think that's something that a lot of people outside of the writing industry talk about enough. And so I'm really glad that
yeah.
you brought it up, because this is really it's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, just this summer, right? We had like a lot of like the writer strike. For example,
Mhm.
right? We've had things
Yep.
like that happen where it's like, the impact of that in the industries, in writing, whether it's like for publishing books and or like entertainment. We see the impact of that and how folks are trying to protect themselves from that. Now, do you find yourself also somehow also embracing these new technologies in any way to help and assist with like what you have to do as a writer?
Truthfully, the only thing that I use would be like the voice software. So I've had a lot of hand problems, and like I broke my elbow earlier this year, and I had to actually finish some of the final drafts of Much Ado About Keanu using voice activated software.
Mm,
And so in that sense, like that's pretty much all that I've used, and it's gotten much better. Like when I tried to use it in the past, it just didn't hear you right, and it would do all kinds of weird stuff. And it seems like that software is kind of more streamlined now. So I would say, as far as like tech helping me as a writer, like that's it. Because like the chat GPT and the AI is like, it's my enemy. And honestly, I think about the Matrix a lot when I'm like,
I know.
like,
I was gonna say, like, we're literally in the Matrix already. If we weren't already.
Yeah, I mean, and we were like kind of theoretically, but like now we're actually like entering into the Matrix in some real ways. And I often think about, you know, Neo and Trinity and like how to break out of it. And I'm like, when is that revolution going to happen? Because we need it to happen like yesterday, like,
right? Yeah.
Before because it's getting out of control. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the blue pill or the red pill.
Within everybody, within ourselves. This book is the revolution, you know?
Yeah.
It's like
For reals.
we gotta do our part in whatever capacity we can.
And tell us, like, and I really want to get into this book then. So, like, one though, and you know, like, just from following you and all that good stuff, I know you're obviously a huge Keanu Reeves fan, right? And enough to actually write a whole book about this, you know. But more importantly, like, one of the things that wanted to just kind of like even just start with, because you know, in the part of like the book, and I know it hasn't come out yet, but you know, thank you for the preview that you sent me. But on one of them, you know, one of the things I noticed in the very first part of it was talking about like his the misconception of like Reeves being just white, you know. And I just even talking about that, like, because you yourself are, you know, multiracial, and you know, like, just talk about some of that as well, and even your own parallels to yourself.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I mean, so that's one of the things that I find really fascinating about Keanu Reeves, is that he is, you know, technically a person of color, but he's been claimed by white audiences, right, and white critics. And that sometimes is to his benefit, and it's also sometimes to his detriment. But one of the things that when you start to kind of include race in discussions about Keanu Reeves' films, you just get so many more layers that emerge. And that's where kind of the historical and the social and cultural significance of this man as a performer becomes so striking and so important, and why he's such a valuable addition to our culture, not just in the United States and North America, but around the planet. And so, so that's, as someone, I mean, I kind of have a little bit of a parallel with him. So he was born in Lebanon, and then lived kind of all over the place. And so he's also multiracial. And so I was born in Sri Lanka. That's where my parents met. So my mother is white and my father is from Sri Lanka. And then I lived all over the world as well. And so there's something different that happens, I feel like, when you don't have a home, like a fixed home. And there's this kind of, I find that there's like a feeling that I get when, you know, Keanu is a very grounded person, he seems like, but like for folks who are raised like we were, you really have to fight for that groundedness. And you have to like put your roots down wherever you can. And where that ends up being is in yourself, right? And I find that when you look at Keanu's catalog, like all of the movies that he's made, there is so much that reflects the uprootedness of our childhood, and then finding the themes that connect with us, and then how we make art around them. So that's something that I really loved with this, you know, being able to write this book about him, was to take all of this, because Keanu is so much. And he usually gets kind of pigeonholed as being a good person, right? I mean, you can't even imagine how many times I hear people say like, oh, I love Keanu Reeves as a person, but as an actor, and I'm like, oh, that's a problem, because you don't know him as a person. Like, we can only engage with him as an actor, and he doesn't get enough props for being a good actor. And so that's another thing I did in this book, is I use a lot of science to kind of prove or demonstrate that Keanu is a good actor, and he's an important performer on so many different levels as well.
Nice. So. Yeah. Those John Wick movies, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, so you know, Keanu, obviously, like, I would say, like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm just like, but from the little that I know about Keanu, as I was trying to do a little bit of research here, was you know, he's definitely known obviously for The Matrix, right? Like, that's one of his you know, biggest movies, of course. But you know, obviously John Wick, and so there's all these like movies, obviously, that he takes that really fit like who he is too, or like the stories that he wants to tell. And I know that in your book that you're trying to also capture a little bit of like how like these different media forms that he participates in also kind of relate to so many like different studies, like you mentioned, like gender studies or philosophy, technology, even sexuality, you know, in that sense. And so like, what was it about like trying to like capture everything about Keanu Reeves that you wanted to kind of like try to put together, right, in the book that's coming out in April here, Much Ado About Keanu, a Critical Reeves Theory? Like, what was it like? How were you trying to like capture so much of that part into your own kind of like take?
Oh, I mean, I feel like Keanu doesn't get enough credit where credit is actually due. And so when I started writing the book, I mean, I already actually had a few essays that I was planning to kind of pitch around and just publish them as like one-off things. But then I kind of, as I started kind of looking at it and I was dealing with these hand injuries and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to even be able to kind of do the same kind of writing at the same level that I was doing before in terms of volume. So like, what is going to mean something? And what can I also spend enough time dedicating myself to that I won't get tired of it? And so what is the book? What is the book that's in me? Like that I feel it that's there. And it kind of like Sideways came out through River Phoenix. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with him, but he's this actor from, you know, he died in the 90s. And he was one of his films was My Own Private Idaho, which also starred Keanu. And that was for me one of like the roles where Keanu captured me. Like that was when I was like, wow, this guy is important. And I was, I don't know, like 13 or, you know, or something, 12 or 13 when I saw that movie. I was very young. And both Keanu and River together were such a force. And that was also another moment for me to be like, wow, like these guys are artists. And there was something there. And that's where like my attention got focused on both of them. And then after River died, you know, I still honestly mourn River Phoenix's death. Like I think about him every day. And I actually, when I started thinking about what book I wanted to write, I actually wanted to write a book about River Phoenix. But then as I started to research it, it was a little bit more complicated to do that, especially as someone who doesn't have, you know, I don't have name recognition yet as an author. And like, there's a lot of trust involved with River's story because of how horribly he died and just the vacuum that left behind, because it's never been filled. And so one night, as I was kind of mourning River again, because I'm like, I can't even write a book about this man that I love so much. I woke up and I was like, wait a second, Keanu Reeves is the River Phoenix who lived. And I just like sat with that for a while and I was like, oh my gosh, like there it is. Like, this is the book that you can write for River, but it's going to be about Keanu. And I feel like River would have loved it too, because even when River was alive, the way that he spoke about Keanu, not as a person, but as a performer and as an artist. Like if you read some of those interviews that River did and the way that he spoke about Keanu's level of art, I was like, oh, like that's the book that that's the first book I'm going to write for River, is going to be about Keanu as an artist and why his art is important. And because the social and cultural significance of his work is amazing. And I mean, like you were mentioning John Wick. I mean, I wrote a whole chapter on John Wick that includes a queer theory, right? And this is like a mega blockbuster action series. And
okay.
What other action series can you think of that a queer theory could emerge that has like multiple levels to it? And other than talking about maybe like some homosexuality or like some like homoerotic subtext, like just a little bit of it, right? But you can never really doubt the heterosexuality of the main characters. When it comes to the John Wick series, there's a lot of bisexual lighting going on there.
I might have to read that chapter and then like see the series again, you know?
Yeah, seriously, because I mean, and that's what's so brilliant about what they've done there, because they use a lot of silent film techniques where there's so much that's happening through the actors' expressions and faces, where you can read things in so many different ways that you can't do with other action series. And so I feel like there's groundbreaking
You're
work.
diving deep into this.
Yeah, I mean,
Love it.
that's just ask me a question about Keanu, and this is what's going to happen. So,
Yeah. Right.
but yeah, so I mean, and I feel like you could do that with all of his movies, and I
Yeah.
do that in the book with all of his movies. Every single movie gets some discussion. So,
Yeah.
and he's
So
been
how
in
many?
78. He's been in 78 films as
78 films. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Ask like, how many times have you seen John Wick? All four of them. Is it four of them, by the way?
Yeah,
There's
I think
four.
it's four.
Yes. Okay. So
Multiple times.
multiple times. The only one I've only seen 3 times is the fourth one. That's a really hard one for me to watch. But the other ones I've seen, I don't know, probably 10, 12,
Yeah.
15 times each.
Yeah. Is The
Many?
Matrix the one you've seen the most?
Oh, the most. Gosh, probably Point Break is the one I've seen the most. That's like my comfort Keanu watch.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. So probably Point Break. The Matrix I have seen
That's
a
where
lot. I've seen
he's
a
like
lot,
Johnny
though.
Utah in that one, right?
Johnny
Point
Utah.
Break.
Oh God, I
Yeah.
love that movie. Is art. That's another one. That's just brilliant. But then like another one I've seen a lot is 47 Ronin. That's like not one of his most popular ones, but it's like a samurai movie. Oh, I love it. I've probably seen that 50 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear Blizzard
yeah.
had one. Which one were you thinking, Blizzard?
Yeah, so one of my favorite ones besides Matrix, of course, is The Devil's Advocate.
Oh.
You guys seen that one?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
with
yeah.
Al Pacino, right? Too,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
So crazy. And then what I
Yeah.
love about it is like it exposes a lot of evil that you would like never see.
Yeah.
With the people
Yep.
in like, higher
Yep.
powers. So yeah.
Yeah,
One of my favorites.
it does. Yeah. And then going into like these hell themes and devil themes is a really big part of Keanu's catalog. Like I don't know if you had a chance to look at the copy of the book that I sent over, but the whole part 2 of the book is like basically a descent into all of the hells that are present in Keanu's films. And there's dozens of them. And he's really not scared to go to the dark side. And that's another thing that I love about him as a performer. He's fearless. Like he is not just going to be the hero character. He's going to be complicated. If he's going to be a hero, he's going to be complicated. And if he's going to be a bad dude, like he goes all in, man. Like he is not. He doesn't care if
doesn't hold
he's a
back.
good person. He doesn't. He is. There's his work. Honestly, like when I try to think about anyone to compare him to, it's difficult to find even one example of someone who has as much range as he does. And Devil's Advocate is a really good example of that. And like major ongoing themes throughout his work where like he loves to live in hell, like and hang out with devils. Like he loves it. Like he's doing it all the time.
Fighting them.
Right. One of the other.
Fighting them. Yeah. Constantine. I mean, it's just, there's so much. Yeah. There's so many of them.
In looking at this, I realized he was also in a Bill and Ted series.
Right? Yes, I know, and I can't come on your show without I can't come on your show without saying San Dimas football rules. Like,
right? Oh yeah, good old Ted right there, Ted Logan.
Yeah.
And then just without giving away the whole entire book, of course, right? But you have it set up, and I got a chance to peruse a little bit of it, and it was like part 1 is all set up with the theme of the Emperor, and then that part 2 is all about the devil, which you kind of already mentioned some of that, and then that last part that you have there, that part 3 has to do with the world. What was your kind of like thinking behind like setting it up in these parts like that, the Emperor, the devil, and the world?
So part of it is that tarot cards are an archetypal way of looking at humans and human behavior, right? And I find that a lot of Keanu's work, it delves into all these different archetypes. And so it was fitting that I could use archetypes from the tarot in order to break down his work into these 3 major themes. But it also relates to a couple of the films that he's been in. So in this highly underrated film called The Gift, directed by Sam Raimi, there's a card reader in the film, and she's a psychic, and it's an amazing film, and Keanu plays one of the worst villains of his career in this movie. He's a wife beater, and it's very intense to see him in that role. So the cards are related to first that film, and then of course in John Wick 4, they use cards as well to determine like how they're going to duel at the end, right? And so again, which also speaks to the archetypal nature of like Keanu's work, and then how it relates to these kind of spiritual tools that we have. that some of us use, for guidance or for information. And I actually have an idea to make a Keanu tarot deck at some point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Now,
yeah.
we already see your jewelry you're sporting there. Thank you, Google Meet, so we can see you,
Yes. So this is actually a Christmas tree ornament that I turned into a necklace. So
Oh my
yeah,
God.
it's like Keanu. Yep.
You're hilarious. I love it.
I
I love
know.
it. Hey, you gotta rock it all the way through, all the way through,
I am committed.
Yes. We see that. We see that. And
Man.
the other thing I just wanted to just kind of like mention when like for you like writing this and like really like breaking it down like this, because it's like talking about like again, like whether it's a sexuality or philosophy and like all these different things that are kind of like so relatable to what's going on now, like with technology and like like the good of it, the evilness of it, right? It's like this, like whether you take the blue pill or the red pill and what that means in today's society, like what's your kind of like take as far as like how like either pop culture or like like in general, like individuals that act and when they take on certain roles and like that impact it has on others, like what do you think possibly was going like in the head of Keanu Reeves in a way, right? Like to be able to like take on certain roles that, like you said, like whether it's him like being comfortable living in hell, like, but like why do you think like he chooses the type of roles that he does? Because a lot of them are like they're big hits, but it's also like kind of like these like subculture, more so,
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to his motivations. Like all I can speak to are the results, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that I read when I was researching was one of the screenwriter of John Wick mentioned that he went over to Keanu's house one day and he saw this stack of like 100 scripts on his desk. And that image really stuck with me because basically Keanu's getting sent everything. So anything that's worthwhile, like indie or big, is getting funneled to him somehow, right? And he is carefully choosing which films that he's going to be in. So when we think about the fact that like, even if you didn't like a movie that he was in, he chose that film. And so what are the themes that are in there that spoke to him, that made him do it? And so like one interesting thing I noticed about his catalog is that he has a lot of films that are featuring cops, but they are not propaganda. And this is an ongoing theme. He only has like, I think 2 films that had kind of a weird propaganda vibe, but all of the rest of them are cop critical narratives. And I'm like, that's interesting because he doesn't normally speak about a lot of political stuff, but this is a political move to make 15 films that are all criticizing state violence and the presence of cops, all the way going back to the beginning of his career in 1986 with Brotherhood of Justice. So when we start to look at his catalog and the themes as a whole, and I line them all up in the book, I've made it really easy to follow all of this stuff. He makes these choices. He's making the choices. So, and what the choices say is that he is drawn to stories about anti-heroes. And he's also drawn to stories where like cops are the bad guys. And like, he's very like, I find that to be one of the most like incredible political statements that an artist can make, really.
Yeah.
Make so many films that are cop critical. And then, and somehow everyone has
never made that connection before like that, That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
pretty dope.
Exactly. Like, and there's so much in Keanu's catalog that's like that, where, and that's another reason why I wrote the book, because once I started to notice all these little things, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't be the only person who sees this now. Like y'all all have to experience.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it,
Yeah, and then it's powerful. Then it takes his movies to another level. So people are only engaging with him as this very likable person and who does good deeds, and he seems so kind and he's so down to earth. But as an artist, he is wild. I mean, some of the choices that he's making are incredibly, I mean, they feel to me very politically motivated in the most quiet way that you could do it, in the most subtle way. And it's almost like all this stuff has been waiting just for someone to notice it, And so one of the things I'm most excited about is for people to kind of revisit his catalog after they read my book, because there is so much there that people just haven't it's just they haven't noticed it. And
Yeah.
it's a lot. Like it's gonna change the way a lot of people see not just Keanu's movies, but I think a lot of other movies at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I'm excited. I'm
yeah.
excited to actually go through every single part of that book now, you know,
Yes.
in the little three-part kind of like setup that you put into it. But, you know, I just want to really thank you for coming on board, talking about this. You know, we'd love to have you as the book drops closer to April, you know,
Yes,
to
please.
talk a little bit more about that. And before we let you go, we just want to go ahead and let you finish it off here with us with what are some words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Oh, I mean, be excellent to each other. Let's keep it on brand, right? Party on, dudes.
There it is. There it is. Well, thank you so much. Once again, we've had SEZÍN Devi Koehler here, a pop culture writer whose work has been featured in all kinds of print and online, including Looper, Black Girl Nerds, Certified Forgotten, Teen Vogue, Shutters the Bite, Horror Homeroom, Kirk Marquis, Scalloway, and so many others, including Entertainment Weekly as well. And the latest book being dropped, Much Ado About Keanu, is April of 2025, y'all. So with that said, we want to just wish you the best. We're going to be in touch with you after the show, but we want to wish you all the best, of course. And we'll be right back here on KROJ, y'all.
Thank you.